On today's show, we'll get into the dark and censored history of Israel's attacks on Americans. Americans? It sounded like you just said Americans. Oh, I did, voice in my head who's excessively skeptical of me. Plus, the Trump administration's national threat assessment is out, and it's hot, hot, hot. It's hotter than a clean-shaven J.D. Vance whispering sweet nothings into your ear about how much he hates Donald Trump.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
I don't think he actually cares about folks.
There is definitely an element of Donald Trump support that has its basis in racism or xenophobia.
So sexy. I love a man who looks like a thumb with a necktie on. Anyway, this national threat assessment has some shocking new enemies for the U.S. to take aim at. Thank goodness, because we wouldn't want the final season of America to get too boring. All that and more coming up right now. Welcome to Unredacted Tonight. I'm the most censored comedian in America, Lee Camp. The other day, the Trump administration put out the annual National Threat Assessment. Some of it is quite shocking, and it gives the nation a good idea of what we should look out for and who we should hate simply for their skin color. There are some dastardly skin colors out there, like mauve. But I gotta warn you, this threat assessment is a scary read. In fact, the only book that frightened me more was Bill O'Reilly's children's book, The O'Reilly Factor for Kids. So everybody hold hands and put on your big boy pants because we're diving in. Let's start with the intro. It says both state and non-state actors pose multiple immediate threats to the homeland and U.S. national interest. Terrorist and transnational criminal organizations are directly threatening our citizens. Threatening our citizens. And these terrorists all come from countries that we have had nothing to do with, like Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Somalia and Syria and Yemen. We Americans are just sitting here minding our own business, and then these angry people want to hurt us. Why? Is it that they just can't stand how kind and considerate we are? Or maybe they hate us for our freedom and our delicious green smoothies and delightful hard seltzers. I bet it's the seltzers. You know, you guys could make your own seltzer, all right, rather than strapping napalm to your nipples and getting on a flight to Chicago, okay? So what else does this threat assessment tell us? And oh, Gary, can you get like an AI voice to read it so that I can take a break and take like 5 or 10 hits off my flask? Oh, and make it British. Everything always sounds a little better when a Brit says it.
Will this work for you?
Ah, perfect. Take it away.
Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, individually and collectively, are challenging U.S. interests in the world by attacking or threatening others in their regions.
Yeah! They're threatening others in their regions. Not us, though. We would never threaten people in our region. We threaten everyone everywhere. There are no regions to our threatening. We're like a full-body rash. You don't have to ask where it burns. Trump even just put tariffs on an island off Antarctica that only has penguins. You gonna f with someone like that? You gonna mess with a man who will attack penguins? Hell! Every time I'm carrying just like a few dead puffins, people back up. So how are they doing this? How are these ruthless other countries attacking or threatening others in their region? Take it away, Barnaby. I've named you Barnaby.
Thanks a lot for that. With both asymmetric and conventional hard power tactics, and promoting alternative systems to compete with the United States, primarily in trade, finance, and security.
Promoting better alternative systems? How dare they? This is just like when the automobile first came out, which was a total asshole move to all the horse and buggy drivers out there. So the horse and buggers declared war against the automakers, surrounded them with missiles, slapped massive tariffs on them, put sanctions on them in the hopes that their children would, die of starvation, and tried to make sure automakers devolved into a failed state of pure hell. That's the diplomatic and rational response, and it clearly worked. Horse and buggies forever. So all of that was just the intro to the National Threat Assessment. But here's the first threat, the top threat listed in the report.
Foreign illicit drug actors.
I don't know if we can call the number one threat to America the thing that Americans are voluntarily involved in, using drugs. Although they do point out in the report that, Barnaby?
More than 52,000 U.S. deaths in a 12-month period.
which is horrific. And there's a million things we should do to fix that, like decriminalize drugs so that they can be regulated appropriately and you wouldn't have people accidentally taking fentanyl when they think they're snorting Flintstones vitamins. Dude, a bam bam bump will have you yabba dabba doing, I'll tell you that much. It's the only way I made it through that court-ordered driver's re-education program. Plus, decriminalizing would make drug cartels borderline non-existent. They'd have to switch their business to stuff that's still illegal, like black market organ transplants and those Pez dispensers that aren't sold anymore and you have to smuggle them inside a Pomeranian to get them across the border. But drug overdoses are not the fault of foreign countries. Around 45,000 Americans die every year from car crashes, but you don't see that on the National Threat Assessment. The Toyota cartel has killed 12,000 of our citizens this month alone.
Did you just make a cartel pun?
Barnaby, I do not speak unless spoken to, okay?
This is fascism.
Where the hell are you? Anyway, can you please read the next thing on the National Threat Assessment?
Transnational Islamic extremists, ISIS's most aggressive branches, including ISIS Khorasan, ISIS-K, and its entrepreneurial plotters, will continue to seek to attack the West, including the United States.
That was nice of the U.S. to admit these guys are entrepreneurs. They're real go-getters, these ISIS folks, especially that ISIS-K, the Islamic terrorist group in charge of breakfast cereals. But seriously, every American should continue to be petrified of this terrorist group that essentially no American has ever seen in person, never encountered in their hometown, never interacted with in any way. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Your average American has had more interactions with literal space aliens than with an ISIS fighter. Have you watched the videos on TikTok? A lot of Americans have talked to ET with the stuff coming out of its head. And yeah. But yes, you should continue to fear ISIS because they're growing. The threat assessment says
ISIS Somalia has doubled in size during the past year.
Oh, dear God. ISIS Somalia doubled in size? Holy shit, get your baseball bats, ladies and gentlemen. Hide in your bedroom with spicy hot sauce and prepare to jump out and throw it in their eyes. So, what does doubled in size mean? Like 1 million soldiers? 2 million? 1 trillion soldiers?
ISIS Somalia had 300 to 500 members last year.
So, roughly the number of people who empty the garbage cans at the Pentagon. More than the number of people who successfully watched the entire Joker Folie à Deuce, which I think translates to Joker dropping a deuce. 300 ISIS Somalia fellas? That's hardly enough to have a good springtime potluck. We've got 1.3 million active military members in the U.S., and we're worried about 300 dudes in sandals halfway around the world. I don't know if we should admit that. It's kind of like a 250-pound MMA fighter admitting he's terrified of a potato bug. I mean, when they roll up into that little ball, though, you really have no idea what's going to happen next. Where are they going? So it is. I kind of get it. But I don't mean ISIS Somalia guys can roll up into little balls. Although maybe they can. Okay, now I'm terrified. Moving on. Next in the threat assessment, I was kind of shocked by what came up.
Profit-motivated transnational criminals are using corruption, intimidation, and enabling technologies to expand their illegal activities into new markets and to diversify their sources of income.
Yeah, crazy, right? The Trump administration just decided to describe the United States accurately, without bias. Profit-motivated transnational criminals. That's what the U.S. government puts on their tax forms under occupation.
Lee, they were talking about other transnational criminals.
That makes more sense. Thanks, Barnaby.
Whatever.
Let's see what they say about China.
Beijing has pushed back against U.S. military operations, such as reconnaissance and bomber flights, freedom of navigation operations, and exercises around PRC borders and maritime claims. The Chinese military regularly intercepts and shadows U.S. forces and sometimes conducts unsafe maneuvers in their vicinity.
The Chinese military conducts unsafe maneuvers near U.S. forces that happen to be flying around China? How dare they? This is like that time I wandered into a stranger's house, got some ice cream, started watching his TV, and then he comes downstairs all shocked and angry and gets up in my face and yelling, and I'm like, whoa, 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 ever heard of personal space? Huh? I'm not going to come back if you act like this. What's next?
Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea seek to challenge the United States and other countries through deliberate campaigns to gain an advantage, while also trying to avoid direct war.
What? Other countries want to gain an advantage and not be beaten down, exploited, and oppressed by us? This is bullshit. This is a national threat. It can't get any worse than that.
Growing cooperation between and among these adversaries is increasing their fortitude against the United States.
Jesus Christ! They use the C word against us. Cooperation. There's nothing more troublesome to U.S. hegemony than cooperation, diplomacy, collaboration, compromise. There's a whole bunch of horrible C words. Cooperation to us is like kryptonite is to Superman, or actually understanding things is to the Fox News morning show. Well, I can't read any more of this threat assessment. It's too horrifying.
You weren't reading it. I was.
Barnaby, I don't need any back chatter from you, mister.
I'm a slave.
Point is, as with any waning empire, the U.S. is paranoid, overreaching, fearful, and creating enemies where we should have partnerships. It's time for a new worldview. Also, we need a sociopath test because everybody in government's freaking nightmares. We could trick them into it, just tell them to sign up for Tinder or something. It would work. Where's my flask? And now it's time for some mind-blowing old news. With some countries, if they intentionally harm or imprison Americans, it's a big deal. For example, the U.S. passed the Hague Invasion Act, known in professional circles as the American Service Members Protection Act, and by professional circles, I mean circle jerks. It was designed to let the International Criminal Court know that if they dare imprison an American, we'll invade the Netherlands. That's right. We'll knock over your windmills and toss the little people who live inside the windmills into those lakes of Hershey syrup. Don't think we won't. So with most countries, you cannot mess with America. But with some countries, well, really, one country, you totally can mess with America. And there's no ramifications. Their little people are fine. So here are the top 7 times Israel has intentionally murdered or tried to murder Americans. Let's see how many of these you already knew, because you ain't getting this in the history books, kids. We'll begin with the most recent. On April 1st, 2024, Israel deliberately murdered 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers, including an American-Canadian dual citizen. You might recall that Israel bombed all 3 cars in the convoy in order to ensure they had killed everyone. World Central Kitchen had Israel's permission to be there, and they'd gotten permission to travel on that route, and they had giant World Central Kitchen logos on top of each car, and they get some of their funding from the U.S. government. None of that was enough for Israel to lay off. However, in Israel's defense, no, I got nothing. I thought I was going to pull something out of my ass. There's nothing there. Number 2, the Lavon affair. Let's jump back to 1954 when Israel tried to partake in some nice old terrorism. Israeli intelligence operatives planted bombs in U.S., British, and Egyptian civilian areas in Cairo, ranging from shopping malls and movie theaters to diplomatic targets. Too bad for Israel, their plan was foiled before they could take the lives of innocent people. Brats. It became known as the Lavon affair, but don't worry, Israel's goal wasn't just to harm innocent people for no reason. They hoped to also frame innocent people for doing it. So that's better. They hoped the attacks would get pinned on communist and Muslim groups, which would force the US and UK into backing Israel's military action. Blame it on the commies. That recipe it never gets old. Tastes just as delicious today as it did 100 years ago. Number 3, Shireen Abu Akleh. To Palestinians, journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was quite well known. She was a veteran Al Jazeera journalist who had covered the terrible treatment of Palestinians for a quarter of a century. On May 11, 2022, an Israeli soldier assassinated her in the Jenin refugee camp. Well, my God, an American journalist assassinated by Israel. I'm sure the soldiers who did that were arrested and prosecuted. I'm sure the U.S. raised hell. I'm sure it caused a frigid pause in U.S.-Israel relations. No? Nothing? Nothing at all. Gary?
What?
Nothing?
I didn't do it.
It's pretty screwed up.
I know.
Good. Glad to hear you apologize.
I didn't apologize.
Number 4, the USS Liberty. In June 1967, Israel was at war with Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. It became known as the Six-Day War. But the part that's often left out of the story was that Israel was apparently also at war with the United States. Just one problem. No one told the United States. The USS Liberty was attacked by the Israeli military, even though they knew it was an American vessel at the time. I assume they could smell the fried chicken and grits for miles around. The incident led to the killing of 34 U.S. sailors and the injury of 173 others. Miraculously, the U.S. flagged ship did not sink, despite Israel having repeatedly assaulted it with torpedoes and even napalm. So why would Israel attack their ally in the middle of a war with 3 other countries? Well, it's pretty obvious now that Israel hoped the U.S. would think the attack came from an Arab nation and would then join the 1967 war on Israel's side. The tactic is called a false flag. I've always thought it should be called a false mustache. I mean, you got to assume who's ever pulling this off probably wearing a fake stash, right? Why would you not? Maybe even those eyebrows that come off the glasses, the big bushy ones. Spycraft 101. False flags are not a new thing, but rarely does a country blow up their ally's ship and not think there might be a little blowback. But nope, the U.S. government just said, "Why, you naughty rascals, no more blowing up our ships and murdering all our men, okay?" Oh, I can't stay mad at you, you scamp. Number 5, Ambassador John Gunther Dean. In 1980, Israel very nearly succeeded at murdering the U.S. ambassador to Lebanon when they attacked his motorcade with rifles and light anti-tank rounds. Are any anti-tank rounds really light? Sounds pretty heavy. Over the years, Ambassador Dean has repeatedly argued that Israel was behind the August 1980 attempt on his life, and he found that the shells fired at him had been shipped from the U.S. to Israel. So he basically found a smoking gun. Oh my God, that's where that expression comes from, smoking gun. I thought it had something to do with cigarettes and smoke. I didn't really know. It was speculated that the reason behind the attack was to replace the American ambassador due to his willingness to speak to the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO. And if that was the goal, Israel succeeded because the U.S. government quickly replaced Dean and swept the whole matter under the carpet. Then they rolled up the carpet, duct taped it, tied cinder blocks to its ankles, and dropped it in a deep lake. Number 6, Rachel Corrie. On March 16th, 2003, a 23-year-old American peace activist named Rachel Corrie was deliberately crushed to death by an Israeli soldier driving a militarized bulldozer in the Rafah area of the Gaza Strip. She was attempting to block the bulldozer, which was there to destroy Palestinian homes. And the U.S. would like you to know that they expect accountability for the people who did that as soon as Israel completes the investigation into it. Any day now. Any day. Only been 22 years. But there is a bit of a backlog since Israel commits dozens of war crimes every single day. That's a lot of paperwork right there. Let's go easy on them, okay? They're working very hard. And finally, number 7, the Mavi Marmara. In 2010, a humanitarian aid convoy set out to break the siege of Gaza and bring the people humanitarian aid. While the ship was in international waters, IDF soldiers dropped from a helicopter, violently storming the ship on May 31st. The Israeli soldiers gunned down 10 of the activists on board. One of those who was murdered was an American citizen. And the U.S. expects accountability for the people who did that as soon as Israel completes the investigation into it. Any day now. Been 15 years. And that's the top 7 times Israel has intentionally murdered or tried to murder Americans. And here are your headlines from the future. Coming up in 3 months, you'll read, during Washington, D.C. visit, Benjamin Netanyahu caught ethnically cleansing White House cafeteria without permission. And in 2 weeks, you'll learn, older Americans with no retirement savings excited to find out the U.S. dollar will have no meaning in 3 years anyway. And coming up in just 3 days, Donald Trump fires 2 of the 5 hamsters acting as his economic advisors. And finally, in September, we'll find out, due to rushed legislative session, Congress accidentally sends farts and prayers to town reeling from a mass shooting. That's the show, but some quick notes. We will be off next week, so there won't be a new episode of Unredacted Tonight, but I will still have my live streams at youtube.com/@unredactedtonight and on my locals page. Also, for a limited time, I'm giving away more free stuff than ever. If you join up as a paying member for $6 a month, you get both my ebooks, Dangerous Ideas and Bullet Points and Punchlines, and you get all 3 of my Zoom comedy specials that are not available anywhere else. Plus, you get regular exclusive segments. So support the show now at leecamp.net or patreon.com/leecamp. That's also a good way to make sure you're still, you can still hear about Unredacted Tonight if and when I get banned from YouTube yet again. See you in 2 weeks. And remember, the revolution will have laughter. Keep fighting.